أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Today is the seventh class from the book Aqeedah Tahawiya. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial for us and those who hear and listen and those who are in attendance. Like we mentioned before in the previous classes, we skipped some parts because it becomes redundant to cover the same thing over and over, even if it's, for instance, with regards to some of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We understand the names of Allah, we understand the attributes of Allah. What I'm trying to drive home is how they are derived and how we utilize them. How they are derived and how we utilize them. But once you understand the principle, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes from the authentic ahadith. Then you apply that with all of the other authentic names and attributes of Allah. Today we're going to cover a different aspect, which is very important. And we find that many of the Muslims kind of fall short in this. Many of the Muslims fall short in this understanding of aqeedah, of belief. And it is al-wujub or wujub al-iman bil-shara' wal-qadr. It is the obligation in having belief or believing in, the obligation or the mandate in believing in, having faith in the legislation of Allah as well as His decree. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, ya akhi al-Faruq. Iman in the shara', the legislation of Allah, and iman in the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first question is, and if you're following the live, you may answer as well. The first question is, what is iman? We covered this before in some of the previous classes. Iman according to Ahl Sunnah. What is iman according to Ahl Sunnah? What's Ahl Sunnah? The people of the Sunnah. Okay, with me. What is iman according to Ahl Sunnah? Because if we say faith is...
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
The belief in Allah.
The belief in Allah.
His message.
Okay, now you're going into depth of a different, different direction. Just iman alone.
Right. Belief in Allah.
Okay. So iman is the tasdeeq al-qalb wal-amal al-lisan wa-amal al-jawarih. يزيد بالطاعة وينقص بمعصية. So according to Islam, according to the scholars of Islam, the scholars of Ahl Sunnah, al-iman is the belief of the heart. Right? Is the submission or the acceptance to those 6 tenets you were about to mention. Right? It's the first. It comes in our heart first. If I talk to you about Islam, if I talk to you about Islam, it's in the heart first, then tongue. If I talk to you about Islam and you say, you know what, I want to say shahada, but you don't understand anything about Islam. You're mentioning the shahada is irrelevant, right? So when you say, I believe everything you say, I believe in the books, I believe in Allah, I believe in His angels, I believe in the books, I believe in the messengers, right? And so on. Then you have accepted in your heart. And then you make the what? The shahada, which is the testimony or confession of the tongue and the action of the limbs. The action of the limbs. So that which you affirmed with your heart and you affirmed with your tongue, it'll show in your actions. It'll show in your actions. So the more iman you have, the more faith you have, the more it will show in your actions. So it's followed up with what? It increases with obedience. The more obedient you are, the higher faith you have. And decreases in disobedience. So if anyone ever asks you, what is iman? This is it. If I ask you what are the tenets of faith, the tenets of iman, then it's like you mentioned, all the way up until the Yawm al-Hisab, the Day of Judgment.
I have one question. Well, let me know it's a statement. I read 2 years ago a hadith is that the prophet said that Iman was confession in the tongue, confirm it in the heart, and then carry it into practice.
This is not a hadith. This is how the scholars explain Iman based on deriving it from the authentic narrations.
Okay.
Right? Like the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Iman bid'a wa sittuna shu'bah. That faith has 70 something odd parts, or odd branches. Al-a'laha la ilaha illallah. That the highest of it is that you say la ilaha illallah. Wa adnaha ima'data adha ala tariq. That you move a harmful thing from the path. So you see how they abstract from the authentic ahadith. طيب. So the Sheikh goes on to mention that which the Imam Tahawiya mentions first, وجوب الإيمان بالشرع والقدر, that to have an obligation of having faith in the legislation of Allah and the decree of Allah. This is وقوله وأمرهم بالطاعة ونهاهم عن المعصية, and he ordered them or commanded them to be obedient to who? To Allah and His Messenger. وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ, and those who are in authority. Those who are in authority, which is a different class, but just generally, that's obedience to Allah. Because Allah put them in a position of power over us. And there's no obedience to the creation in disobedience to Allah. No obedience to creation, disobedience to Allah. If the Imam says, you know what, Sheikh Yusuf, you don't have to come pray today, right? Take a break, take 2 weeks off, come back after 2 weeks, and then you can pray. It's okay.
I don't have to follow that.
You said you don't have to follow that because I don't have the authority to tell you not to pray. Only Allah has the authority to tell you not to pray. Likewise, the king, likewise the president, likewise your parents, right? Your employer. Well, we need you to work today. You can't pray. You say, this is bigger than us, right? This is bigger than me, bigger than you. This is the command of Allah. So that He ordered us to have obedience to Him, and He forbade us from being disobedient to Him. في هذا التنبيه على الوجوب الإيمان بالشرع مع الإيمان بالقدر. He said, and this is the warning that pertains to having faith and iman in that which Allah legislated and that which Allah had decreed. والإيمان بأن الله علم ما العباد عملون بعلمه القديم وكتب ذلك. And this is having iman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything that the slave will do. And it's already been written. Allah knows everything that the slave will do, and it's already been written. And this is established in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar bin As, and other than this hadith, where it's mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ said, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال كتب الله مقادير الخلائق قبل أن يخلق السماوات والأرض ب50,000 سنة ثم قال صلى الله عليه وسلم وكان عرشه على الماء. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had written everything that will exist of the creation or will be done or has something to do with the creation before He created the heavens and the earth. Before He created the heavens and the earth, that which you see, the heavens and earth, before all of that, the creation, what was created before all of that, and 50 years before that, while His throne, 50,000 years, Mumtaz, Barakallahu Feek. 50,000 years before, while His throne was above the water. And another narration by Ubadah bin Samit, إن أول ما خلق الله القلم فقال له اكتب فقال ماذا اكتب قال اكتب مقادير كل شيء حتى تقوم الساعة. So in this hadith, Ubadah bin Samit, he reports that the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, the first thing that He created was the pen. The first thing that He created was the pen. And He ordered it to write. And the pen spoke to Allah and said, what shall I write? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the pen to write all that will be in existence, all that will be in existence until the day of judgment. So the pen wrote everything. When you combine the hadith, the two hadith together, what we see is that what the pen wrote, and when the pen actually did this writing, was 50,000 years before the creation of man. So we are ordered to do what? To accept and obey Allah's command, right?
His messenger.
And His messenger.
And those charged with authority upon.
Okay. And to have iman in His legislation and in His decree. وَأَنَّ كُلُّ شَيْءٍ يَجْرِي بِمَشِيئَةِ اللَّهِ. And everything, it comes and it happens by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. والإيمان بأن الله أمر عباده بطاعته ونهاهم عن المعصية. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded His slaves to obey Him and forbade them from being disobedient. And then He brings a couple of short ayat to establish that, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمْ. Right? He says, O mankind, worship your Lord. And this here, this ayah, this verse here shows what? It shows that the ultimate command from Allah to the slaves, whether they be Muslim or non-Muslim, the command to worship the Creator is not just solely for the Muslims. It's not only for the Muslims, right? Because that's our purpose. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا خَلَقَتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. He said that He did not create the jinn and men except that they should worship Him alone. So the command is for the Muslims and the non-Muslims. This is why I mentioned يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ and not يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, and not O you who believe. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and do not associate partners with Allah while you are conscious, while you are aware. Right? So, in the first ayah, we see a command to obey Allah. And then and to worship Him. And then the second ayah is to stay away from worshiping or associating partners with Allah. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, and it has been decreed for you. It has been decreed for you that you worship Allah alone. And you are righteous or dutiful to your parents. You're dutiful to your parents. And that's amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He connected here the obedience to worshiping Him alone with obeying the parents. Worshiping Allah alone, not with the salah, with the prayer. Worshiping Allah alone, not with the giving of zakat, charity. Worshiping Allah alone, not with the making hajj or umrah, but to be dutiful to your parents. And what we see now from the signs of the hour is that what? That the slave girl will give birth to her master. And one of the interpretations for this is that the children will become extremely disobedient. The children will become extremely disobedient. And now what we see is the children become extremely disobedient. Right? So much so that the house will be turned upside down if you're not able to get them the newest game for their system, digital system, or the newest phone, right? Or the newest pair of sneakers, right? Or the newest piece of clothing. And the child becomes extremely disobedient or extremely arrogant and haughty because he wants something that he feels he's deserving of. طيب. For the Sheikh, he goes on to say, لا بد للاستقامة على الصراط المستقيم في هذا المقام من الإيمان بالشرع والقدر جميعا. And it is a necessity that we tread the path or the straight path with faith in the legislation as well as faith in the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we say faith in the decree, many Muslims won't have a problem with this. Many of the Muslims won't have a problem if you say you have to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed everything that's in existence 50,000 years before the creation of man, and if something, an ailment, some kind of calamity, some kind of trial befalls you, then know that it is with the wisdom, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether you understand it or you do not, right? Allah does not create evil, He creates in good, and if it seems bad to you, then it's with the wisdom, it's in a wisdom that's with Allah. Many of the Muslims won't have any problem with that. But unfortunately, we reached a point now where many of the Muslims will have a problem with what? Al-Iman bil-Shara', having belief in the legislation of Allah. Now, the legislation of Allah is established within Al-Quran wa ahadith sahiha or sunnah sahiha, right? The authentic sunnah, not the weak ahadith, not the fabricated ahadith that are not true or accurate or not precise or verified, but the authentic ahadith. طيب. So if we all say على سبيل التسليم على سبيل المثال نستسلم, we give example, we say, you know what, we all agree that we have belief in the legislation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. If that is the case, we won't find any of the Muslims having any problems with the hudud of Allah, the capital punishment that is established by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You won't have any Muslims having any problems with it. But now you can find Muslims that say, what? If Allah says, that the whipping or the qatl al-yad, or you say, no, that's of the days of the old. You don't have to follow that anymore. You have Muslims that will say this. You have Muslims that will deny the hudud of Allah because of what? Because of Western influence and Western brainwashing and compromising of the religion, but yet you don't find Westerners compromising their principles. Perfect example. We have the establishment of the capital punishment for certain individuals who exceed the bounds of Allah, the limits, and then there's a punishment for those particular type of things that they do, right? Whether it be cutting of the hand for the thief, or the lashes for the fornicator, or the pelting of the stones, or whatever. We say, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed this is the shara of Allah, we accept it. Bala nazid, wala nanqas. We don't add anything, we don't take anything away. Right? And then you find the compromising, but yet we still have in many states the gas chamber. We still have in many states lethal injection. We still have in many states the electric chair. And these means of capital punishment are extreme. They're torture. They're ways of methods of punishment that are not allowed in Islam. So as we're trying to change the religion to compromise and to please non-Muslims, they are not changing anything. وَتَعَدَّدَ الزَّوْجَاتِ, polygyny, taking more than one wife. How many of the sisters will make any excuse possible to deem it to be something that is not permissible? Oh, you don't have enough money, you can't marry another one, you make $150,000 a year, she still make her have a problem with it, right? Or she says, this is only for the elite, It's not for the everyday Muslim. You have to be a Sheikh, you have to be an Imam, you have to be a tajir, a businessman. ولكن العكس. It is from some of the Salaf, some of the ulama, they say, تعدد الزوجات is the asl fi الزواج. It is the origin for marriage. That you take on a second wife or a third wife and so on. With conditions. With conditions. But we don't try to change and alter the religion. Those conditions are for another class. Those conditions and those dawabit and those principles are for another class. But the reality is that this is the shara of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not decree anything with dhulm, right? Except that He decrees with adl and with wisdom. So if Allah decreed it to be from the religion, then it is from wisdom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obliged the hijab. What's the hijab? What's the hijab? The hijab is the covering that the Muslim woman wears. Right? Imam Abu Isa, I can't tell a woman, no, you don't have to cover this, don't do this, take that off, wear it like this. No. Its legislation is defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not defined by Imam Muhammad Abu Isa. Not defined by Imam Fulan wa Alan. This person or that person. Its legislation comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is only upon us to accept it. If a woman, she felt the need to take it off, the need to alter it, the need to put makeup, and she cannot say what I am doing is permissible. She has to be upon the understanding that her altering to the hijab is something muharram, is something that is impermissible, but her level of faith is there. It's not higher than that. Now we reached a point in time where it's common that you'll find a Muslimah should have hijab, right? She'll have hijab, her hair is covered. And then she has a tight shirt. You see the full contour of her upper body. And she has a tight skirt. Or maybe she has leggings underneath. You see the full contour of her body. And this is what Sheikh Uthaymeen, he mentions al-hijab. Hijab is satr. It is covering to a point where you're hiding what's underneath. You're hiding what's underneath, not mere clothing. So you have clothing on and say, oh no, I'm not nude, I'm not naked, I have something on, so I'm wearing hijab. No, if that's the case, what's the purpose of hijab? If your shirt or your blouse is tight to the point where, or it is see-through to the point where it's not covering anything, this is not hijab. It's not hijab. And hijab shouldn't be accompanied with, sorry sisters, we have to mention the haq, we have to talk about it. Hijab should not be accompanied with makeup and perfume that causes or distraction or causes focus on the actual individual. If this sister is wearing makeup and she's wearing red lipstick and she's wearing tons of foundation and she's wearing eyeliner and she's wearing lashes and she's wearing nails fully painted, what's the purpose of hijab? Where's the purpose of hijab? Where's the honor in hijab? There's no honor. So when we say we nu'minu bi ma shara Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wa qadri, that we believe in what Allah, His legislation, and we believe in His decree, we believe in all of it. We believe in all of it. And we're not from amongst those who seek to try to find ways out. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions example of those people who try to find a way out, where they say, سيقولون الذين أشركوا لو شاء الله ما أشركنا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and those who say, those who associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they say, if Allah willed, we would have never associated partners with Him. If it's basically saying what? We're doing what Allah wanted for us to do. We're associating partners with Allah because this is the decree of Allah. This is what Allah wanted us to do. And to the end of the ayah. And this is something that is a major misunderstanding and a major deviance with regards to understanding and belief in the legislation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His decree. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives evidence for that when He says, وَإِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً فَقَالُوا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهَا آبَاؤُنَا وَاللَّهُ أَمَرْنَا بِهَا. And then they say that, and when they do some kind of corruption or some kind of sin, they say, we found our forefathers doing this. We found our forefathers doing this, and this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, قُلْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَأْمُرُ بِالْفَحْشَاءِ. Say to them that verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't order that which is corrupt. He doesn't order that which is corrupt. So all of those things that we said we believe in the Hajj and all of its rituals from the decree and the legislation of Allah. We believe in the Salah. We believe in Hijab. We believe in the Hudud, this capital punishment. We believe in Al-Qadr and its decree and all that comes with it. And we don't entertain to add anything or take anything away from that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for us. And normally I try to keep the classes very basic, pretty short, less than 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes, right? And I try to keep it pretty basic. And I also try to keep it away from talking about certain sects of deviance. Because some people, they're at a level where they just want basic motivation and inspiration to understanding that they can be a student of knowledge, even if it's on a small level. And when you make it, when you start going into these other issues, people can get a little lost. They can get a little lost and get a little confused, and it start to feel like practicing Islam is something difficult. And Islam is not something difficult. وَطَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ is not something difficult. Right? Seeking knowledge is not something difficult. Because you can study and seek knowledge here in America, here in Pakistan, here in Bangladesh, here wherever you are, even if it's on a small, minute level. Right? Even if it's on a small level. But we're going to cover a little bit of one particular group of deviants called a Jabriya. And the Jabriya, they are a group who denied some of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their understanding of the qadr or decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that Allah, everything that you do, you're doing it because Allah forced you to do it. Everything you do, they believe that you're doing it because Allah forced you to do it and you have no choice. But the opposite is actually correct. You do have a choice. Allah gave you that choice. And as a result of their understanding of the qadr, the decree of Allah, their faulty understanding, it comprises of other aspects of deviance that distorts just general understanding of the decree. For instance, if I am forced to do the actions that I'm doing, then when and where will I have the ability to what's the purpose of the Day of Judgment?
For you to be judged according to your deeds.
Okay, so if I'm judged according to my deeds, this means that I have choice. I have choice, right? Now, I don't have the choice to change the universe, for what will be, but I have choice to choose that which is a righteous action or that which is a sinful action. So when I choose a sinful action, I can't say, no, Allah wanted me to do that, that's why I did it. I'm free of any type of fault. No, you're not free of any type of fault. The reality is you're going to be held accountable for that fault. So with them, if you have belief in Allah, even if it's a small amount of belief in Allah, then you are a mu'min, you are a believer at the highest level. You're a mu'min, you're a believer. Because Allah commanded you and forced you to do everything. But this is why we started with what? What was Iman in the beginning? What was Iman, the meaning of Iman in the beginning? And we said it was that you believe in your heart, the actions of the tongue, acceptance from the tongue and the testimony of the tongue, and the action of the limbs. It increases in obedience and decreases in disobedience. So this understanding will help you refute all of the deviants that have deviated in Aqeedah, whether it be the Mu'tazila or the Jahmiya or the Jabriya. All of these different groups, the Qur'ani, all of these different groups, you're going to have the tool to understand their falsehood, because you understand how Iman is implemented and understood. And you're going to understand that it is abstracted from the earlier generations and how they understood Islam. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.